Hey guys, this video is going to be about integral science and integral philosophy. If you're not familiar with that, start with Ken Wilber. He's probably, I guess you could say, the founder of integral thought and studies, from which a great many other thinkers have come forward. He sort of established it. What it is, to put it very shortly, is basically the study of all this vast information that we have and trying to see if there's some kind of underlying picture from all of the philosophies, all of the theorists, past, present, future. Is there some kind of underlying pattern and relationship between all this stuff? We're sort of in a post-information age where we've had all this abundant data, and now let's start to see if there's a bigger picture. Underlying pictures, not necessarily transcendent like we used to think in old days, but a bigger picture that is underlying, integral. So that's integral theory. I've talked a lot about this in the integral science series, but I mean the one of the major points that keeps coming up is the use of maps and how important they are, because at least with Wilber and many of the integral theorists, the use of integral maps or diagrams trying to integrate everything is vital in order for this to be. And from I guess, a conceptual standpoint, that's good. We need these maps and diagrams to help us conceptually understand the relationship between things. We think conceptually. So that's not all we're limited to, but certainly if we want to start to create theories of everything, then comprehensive maps are nifty and important, because they help point out relationships. They're symbols, they're representations of the territory that we're working with here. And they're very different because they're not just focused on one particular thing, but greater processes of growth and development. So yeah, I guess that's the important aspect here. We're working with grand narratives again, but not necessarily in the same way we used to be. So yeah, let's start with that. Maps are important. Number one. But they have limitations. And in particular, there's been a discussion going on at integrallife.com, one of the communities based off of Ken Wilber's think tank and an internet community called Integral Naked. It's sort of slowly been evolving. This is the latest manifestation. The discussion has been about the nature of integral and how important are the maps, the descriptions, because we have things like states, stages, spiral dynamics, aqua, which is it's like a 4-quadrant representation of the different aspects of reality, trying to integrate everything, see the relationship between all things. I mean, these things are very nifty, they're very important, but the question has been asked, how important are they? And are they getting in the way of communicating? Because some people want integral to be like the new wave of thought for the next century, like the new idea to integrate all these different things. It'd be great. It would help us get along better, all this. But then the question becomes, what about communication? How do we convey this meaning to the greater public without sounding like we're speaking our own language? So language becomes very important, but then it also becomes a potential barrier between for integral to evolve, because if it wants to evolve, then it's going to need a more dynamic description, which is very difficult. It's almost a paradox at first, because we have all these complex descriptions of integral theory and the relationship between different meaning and the evolution of meaning. There's so many different philosophies, so yeah, the map of all this stuff is going to get really complicated, and the people who study this stuff are going to start to know it very well and are going to evolve it to a very complex and very, very comprehensive nature. But that's not the end of the theory, and then it's not just a matter of spreading it. Then it's a matter of getting people to know what you're talking about, and that's the difficult part. As a theory, it's well developed, I guess you could say, But as far as an applicable thing for everybody to start to be like, oh, that's a good idea, not the case. Not yet. The argument is going back and forth on integral life, whether or not, like, they even need to think about this problem or not, but I think it's a very important problem if integral wants to be a theory of the 21st century. I don't want it, I mean, I don't want it to fade away, but it's definitely got to become more flexible, because it's just reached a point in its evolution where language is a hindrance and a helper, and it needs to find a better adaptation to translate this to the greater public. I mean, it's all about seeing underlying patterns, it's all about integrating, seeing different perspectives, being flexible. For instance, they often call this yellow. Yellow is being able to integrate. And then turquoise and indigo. These are terminologies that are in the maps, that are in the descriptions that help understand this. And they're saying, we're integral, we're yellow, we're turquoise, we're integrating, and we have integral maps. Let's share them. But interestingly enough, and ironically enough, in integral, in the theory of spiral dynamics, there comes a point where our consciousness is not only able to see underlying patterns, but then be able to dynamically translate. And it doesn't just have one level where we do that. It's an evolving process, and I think this is part of that evolving process, learning to translate this to the general public without needing to assimilate them, to make them memorize all of the new language, etc., etc. How to make it begin to arise naturally, to let it grow naturally. It's very important if they want to survive. It's one thing to talk about it with like-minded people, and another thing to bring it out to the public, the general audience, because integral is not 2% of the population. I think, and they think it's going to explode eventually and become more dominant. I think the way it's going to do that is to find a better way to translate the meaning, the understanding of integrating to the greater public. That's the challenge. Once it does that, then yes, we may begin to see more than 2% of the population being integral. I don't even know if this conversation is basic enough for... I mean, I don't know if I'm using too much lingo to lose people in all this stuff, even right now. Any system of thought can have a problem when it's too heavy. Then it sounds like people are speaking another language, and there's no... You lose the meaning that you may understand, but the other person may need a bridge to close the gap between perspectives. Integral is a great way about describing this whole relationship, but is it great at actually doing the dirty work and translating and embodying and closing the gap between meanings? That's the challenge of integral, and I think they're doing a pretty good job at it, but they're reaching the point where this is gonna be the test. So I think that's really all I wanted to talk about integral. So thank you for listening, and please, by all means, this is a very interesting topic. Make a response video if you'd like.